Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Scoberg here with Consolidated Planning Group. We are excited to be here with you today. And today we're super excited because we have a new topic that we are talking about today about enabling adults living with a disability to spend their own money and increase their independence. We are here today with Peter Wall, and he's going to be talking to us about the TrueLink card and why maybe we should consider this. And I know personally, for you guys that have attended webinars in the past, you know that I have two adult kids with disabilities, and one in particular is not great with money. And I know that we hear that a lot from some of the families that we work with, that some of our kids have spending issues, or they really don't have big concepts of money, and fortunes flow through their hands relatively quickly. So we're going to talk about some ways that we can promote their independence, but also protect them from themselves as well. So I'm excited about this topic. I always like to go over a few housekeeping items. Today, we are in webinar mode, and that means that we can't see you or hear you, but we know you're out there, and we're glad that you're here with us. We invite you to put your questions in the chat box today. If you're keeping time, we will be finished within an hour. So if you're making plans for the day, you can know that. All of our webinars are recorded. All of our webinars live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel after the fact. Everyone that has registered for this webinar today is going to get a copy of our slides and a link to the recording so they can go back for a reference in the future. So I always like to mention that so you don't have to take notes on every single thing you hear today. Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. Families come to us because they want to plan for the future of their loved one with a disability. They want to know exactly how and when to apply for public benefits, how to protect those public benefits. And I know Peter's going to be talking about some of that a little bit today. They might want to know, how much money do we need to fund a special needs trust for my loved one? And we're going to help with all of those types of things. We set up protection plans, lifetime care plans. We do a lot of transition planning. We help set up ABLE accounts. We do a lot of advocacy by way of webinars. We always like to mention that it's really important, whether you work with us or you work with somebody else, work with a specialist that is nuanced in special needs. And that comes to the financial planning side of the house and having money in the right buckets. And it also comes to legal advice. It is so critically important that you work with a professional that is specifically nuanced with individuals with disabilities for your legal documents. And we'll probably hit on that a little bit today as well. So having said that, without any further ado, Peter, I'm going to stop my share. If you would like to go ahead and share your screen, I'm going to let you take it away. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I had the pleasure of hearing Peter talk about this TrueLink card at the UT Special Needs Planning Conference for attorneys and professionals in the industry. And it's just an answer to a lot of people's issues. And the thing is, we wanted to get the message out there because I think a lot of people still don't know about TrueLink. And so we're excited for you to take this away. So thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure to be here and spread the word, not only about the TrueLink card, but like you said, we'll go on a little bit about protecting public benefits, which are so crucial for people with disabilities. A little bit about myself. Before joining TrueLink, and I've been with TrueLink about 6 years, I spent 20 years in large banking institutions, working as a trust officer, and then actually developing and leading a National Special Needs Trust and Elder Law Division, which is how I got involved, so involved in Texas. As you can see, I present and teach continuing legal education courses all over the country, and I think I've been on the UT SNT Law Conference faculty since 2017. So very familiar, with the rules and regulations there in TrueLink. Excuse me, and in Texas. Let me tell you a little bit more about TrueLink and the TrueLink card and how we got started. My co-founder, Kai Stinchcomb, was his grandmother had dementia and was starting to lose capacity. And he said to his mother at the time, who was managing his grandmother's finances, gosh, there has to be some way because grandma is giving, money to charity every day and she forgets then the next day that she's already given that money. There has to be a financial product out there where we can still give her financial independence, right? Empowerment, but still not put her entire estate really at risk. And his mom made a bet with Kai and said, you know what, Kai, you know so much. You think it's out there, go find it. And if it's not, then you can take over grandma's finances. Well, turns out that there wasn't such a vehicle. Thank goodness, because Kai and sort of started TrueLink and the TrueLink card side of our business. And you can see that story. It's actually been featured on CNN, CNBC, and through Schwab and things of that nature. But that's how we got started. Now, that be taking care of the aging population was certainly the priority of TrueLink when we started. But if you think about it, and this isn't groundbreaking news, right? As everyone ages, we will all have some sort of disabling condition, right? So the natural bridge to the use of the TrueLink card was, hey, we can actually use these for people with disabilities now and really start to serve what I think is one of the most underserved, but maybe one of the most deserving populations in this country, and that's people with disabilities. And we can do it in such a way where we can provide them with this TrueLink card. We can provide them with the opportunity to gain financial literacy, and we can also do it in a way that protects their public benefits. And so that's a perfect segue, quite frankly. Not trying to break my arm, patting myself on the back there, but into, hey, what kind of public benefits are we talking about here? And generally what we're talking about is preserving that SSI or supplemental security income with the addition of Medicaid, right? And there's all these rules and regulations. And for those family members who've gone through all of that red tape to even get those public benefits for their loved ones or for themselves, you know how invaluable not only the income is from SSI, but also maybe more importantly, the Medicaid. And part of that is that, from either a special needs trust or from other funding sources, including, working, any income that is either earned or given can negatively affect the amount of benefit or that SSI, that $943 a month, that the SSI recipient receives. Now, raise your hand if you could live on $943 a month, right? You probably can't. And unfortunately, in this country, government benefits for people with disabilities are generally linked to poverty levels and things of that nature. Well, what we definitely don't want to do is be in a situation where we've provided a beneficiary with a disability who's on SSI. What we don't want to do is give them money, right? So that is income or even a resource. And you can see there that resource cap is $2,000, meaning anything that beneficiary has over $2,000 at the end of the month, then they no longer qualify for SSI until those funds are spent down. So how can we get people with disabilities money for that financial empowerment for just day-to-day living expenses, quite frankly, that will protect their public benefits? And we'll get into that and how the TrueLink card can help facilitate some of those issues. Generally, we see a lot of our clients using a special needs trust, right? A special needs trust is really applicable for anyone who needs that SSI and that Medicaid, or even that SSDI. I'll scroll back up here for a second. SSDI is a pay-in program, so there's no resource cap, but sometimes you have people who are dual eligible, okay? What I mean by that is maybe their work history, this SSDI amount, doesn't meet this $943 a month in terms of an entitlement or what they receive from the government. So then they're on SSDI and SSI. Medicare comes with SSDI after a certain waiting period, but we're not going to go that deep today. And they receive Medicaid and then have, Medicare and then have Medicaid as a secondary payer. So it's really important for the financial professionals out here today and the trustees and fiduciaries to know exactly what public benefits our beneficiaries are receiving so that we know, hey, can we supplement, or even supplant some of those public benefits, and what will be the ultimate ramifications thereof.
Peter, I just want to mention this for a second because you brought up a really good topic, and this slide is perfect on the SSDI, because I think as parents, we hear around the water cooler other special needs parents saying, well, oh, well, they're on SSDI, then you don't have to worry about the income limits anymore. I mean, the asset limits, the $2,000, that doesn't matter to you. And that is true if you do not care about Medicaid or Medicaid waivers. And all states have Medicaid waivers, and the Medicaid guidelines apply to all of the Medicaid waivers. Those Medicaid waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services. They could pay for attendance services, respite services, various therapies. And some of those waiver budgets are huge. And so this could be an important factor to someone. And I just want to mention, be careful, little ears, what you hear about once you switch over to SSDI, that it doesn't matter. I just want to mention that because we hear that all the time, Peter.
No, that's a great point. And probably the biggest reason to have both, we call it dual eligible, or is to have that Medicaid backup, is guess what Medicare doesn't pay for, guys? Long-term care. So as your beneficiary ages and maybe needs to be in a skilled nursing facility, assisted living facility, guess who's not going to pick up that bill? Medicare's not. And so that's why that dual eligible piece and that preserving that benefit of Medicaid can be so important.
And nor will your private health insurance if you have that.
Right.
And, we realize that Medicaid doesn't always have the in-network providers that you like to go to, the creme de la creme doctors. We understand that, but there's other reasons for that. There's other reasons why people that are affluent keep their child Medicaid eligible, because some people, kind of take that Medicaid word and they tie it to indigent and poor. And it's not always the case of how that. I mean, we have people's kids that are Medicaid eligible that have millions of dollars in their special needs trust. So I just wanted to take a moment and talk about that, because I think there's some misinformation floating around out there.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. An ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure down the road. Absolutely. So as we talk about special needs trust, and this will be important, trust me, guys, this all ties back. I'm going to get to the TrueLink card. Who needs a special needs trust? Anyone who has over that $2,000. I'm not going to go into the difference between first and third party special needs trusts and things like that. Not really the point of this. But I think what I want to stress is, from a special needs trust, the same sort of restrictions apply for a recipient from SSI. And we'll talk about what those restrictions are. Generally, food and clothing, not food anymore. We'll get to that. Are things that cannot be provided for the beneficiary. They're supposed to use their SSI funds, which are tied to Medicaid, right, to pay for food and shelter. Okay, not food anymore. And again, we'll get to that because that's a fairly new update. But quite frankly, as you're looking at long-term planning, for your children with a disability, for example, or just your children in general, special needs trust is needed by anyone who can't handle large sums of money, or anyone who could receive benefits in the future. As Allison just said, guess what? That's all of us. So having that, as you're talking to your elder law attorney, your special needs trust attorney, your estate planning attorney, certainly go down that road and take a look at, hey, do we need to put up a contingent special needs trust if, between the time that I pass away, et cetera, that all of a sudden I have a child, who is now on public benefits, and we didn't think about it when we did the initial planning. And again, I will echo what Allison said earlier, which is hire a specialist with, and sometimes this stuff can be expensive with the attorneys, but you don't take your Ferrari to the local guy down the street to change the oil, right? Your children are your Ferrari. Go ahead and spend the money up front. Do it the right way.
I always say it's not a DIY project. There's a lot of
Yeah.
DIY projects out there, but when it comes to planning for your loved one with a disability, it's absolutely not. I just wanted to comment.
Mhm.
We had a question: is SSDI the same as DAC? They call it DAC, Disabled Adult Child. They also call it CDB, Childhood Disability Benefits under a parent's record. Sometimes they call it Social Security. Sometimes they call it Social Security SSDI. So all of those terms are synonymous. So if you're wondering why you're confused sometimes, that's why. But yes, DAC, Disabled Adult Child Under a Parent's Record, is sometimes referred to that.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so other types of income that we're looking, or resources that we're looking to avoid, right? We're looking to avoid giving these things to our child. And I'm just going to, just from now on, I'm just going to consider this a presentation about parents with a child with a disability. We're going to talk about unearned income for a second. Giving cash to your child with a disability sounds like a great idea, right? Sounds like something we should be able to do. Well, Social Security says, that's what's called unearned income, or in-kind support and maintenance. And that's like if you buy groceries for your child with a disability and they're receiving SSI, and you report it, then that should reduce the SSI amount. So again, what I'm trying to just stress here is, hey, there's a lot of pitfalls here, but we want to figure out this tool where we can actually get our beneficiaries not cash, but the ability to spend, make financial decisions on their own, maybe with the help of a supported decision maker, et cetera, et cetera. Other things that count as in-kind support and maintenance, which reduce that SSI, can potentially, I should say, reduce that SSI amount, are things like rent, heating, fuel. You can see them here. You guys can read. I'm not going to go through that. Used to be food. So as of September 30th, just here recently, food has been removed as a item that can be provided either from a special needs trust, a regular trust, a family member, a support group, whatever, that does no longer count against that beneficiary's SSI amount. So yay, seems like a no-brainer. Probably should have happened a long time ago. Used to be, when I actually started in this industry, it was clothing as well that was a prohibited item, but now that went away quite a long time ago. But now we have food removed, which is great.
That was a long time coming. And another thing that people ask about is that Medicaid number of the $2,000. Now, we do serve clients all across the country, and the Medicaid number is mostly $2,000 for most states, not California. There are
Right.
a handful of other states that have higher limits, but most states it's $2,000. And a lot of people ask, I heard it's going up to $10,000. There was some proposed legislation, it never did pass. It doesn't mean that it might not pass in the future for those numbers to go up in the future, but it has not yet. But one person asked a great question, and I think this is good for everybody to hear, Peter. Can a regular trust managed by a trustee suffice the need of a special needs trust as it relates to public benefits?
Yeah, I think the answer is maybe, if the trust is drafted correctly. So things, there might be a slide in here. Yeah, so things like, nope, there's not a slide in here on that. I apologize. Things like sole benefit. So the trust has to be for the sole benefit of the beneficiary. The funding mechanism has to be correct, right? If it's funded from the beneficiary's money, there has to be a Medicaid payback in it. So there are certain qualifications, but generally, I think as long as there's not mandatory net income distributions to the beneficiary, right, which would obviously reduce those benefits, or if the beneficiary has the right to compel the trustee for certain dollar amounts, then it would not suffice. But in general, I would say, yeah, probably, but also worth checking out. Worth checking out to make sure your trust would qualify.
And again, that's where it comes to getting that great legal advice from a person that's nuanced with individuals with a disability. In my opinion, as a parent of kids, is it's better to just lean into the special needs trust than trying to make one look like a special needs trust, because you've got people on the other end at the Social Security Administration that are putting their stamp of approval of good or not good. And so just having a properly drafted special needs trust at the end of the day, that's probably what I would lean into, um, otherwise. Okay. Is a 529 limited in how long it can be used as a savings bucket?
So 529A, an ABLE account. How long it can be used? No, but there is well, actually, let's push pause on that question because I actually have some slides on ABLE at the very end here. And yes, actually, I think the majority of ABLE programs around the country actually issue TrueLink cards to their beneficiaries. There's a conglomerate called Stable that runs about 17 different states programs, and their beneficiaries get ABLE cards. I do not believe I should know this, but I don't believe the Texas ABLE program uses TrueLink cards. But we'll get to that, all the 529 stuff in a bit. Appreciate the question. Okay, the other thing that, I just like to get out of the way is when we talk about income, when I'm talking about, hey, in-kind support and maintenance, all the different types of earned and unearned income from a trust, distributions from a trust are different than income for public benefits qualification. In other words, when we're talking about, and we'll get into this, when you're talking about spending money out of a special needs trust to or for, mostly for the benefit of the beneficiary, with a disability, you're transferring funds onto the TrueLink card, for example, for that beneficiary to use to purchase whatever items they need. That transfer does not count as income. So I see this all the time, or also, parents will ask, well, gosh, Pete, we don't want to earn any interest in this trust because it's income and it'll count against that beneficiary's SSI award. Not true. Okay. So income generated within the trust or distributions from the trust don't count as income for public benefits qualification. Okay, we can kind of skip this first and third party. I want to make sure that we have time to get to the TrueLink card stuff. I will just say first party means money of the beneficiary, whether that's from a settlement, medical malpractice, personal injury, funds that they have, and then they become disabled. Those types of trusts are called first party trusts. They require a payback. Basically, Medicaid and SSI say, hey, listen, you can put all this money into this trust and use it for things that we allow, right? The things I showed you before that were ISM items. But at the end of the day, we're going to come to your trustee with a bill, right? That says, okay, here's how much you owe. And generally, at least in my experience, that usually exceeds the remaining corpus or the amount left in the trust. Third party trust, this is where good planning comes in to play, right? This is where mom or dad have set up the trust with their own money. And then they, at the end of the day, when that beneficiary passes away, because it's never touched the beneficiary's hands, it can go to brother, sister, grandchildren, whatever the case may be. There's also a fantastic program right there in Texas called the Arc of Texas, who is great, that runs a pooled trust program. So, really using economy of scale. They're actually one of the largest pooled trusts in the country, very well respected. And that's basically pooling all the different beneficiaries' monies together for economy of scale, ease of administration. And gosh, you want to talk about Texas specific public benefits experts? They're incredible. Highly recommend them. Okay, so Pete, you told us everything that a special needs trust can't pay for. What can it pay for? These are just examples, but basically everything but shelter costs now. So that's wonderful. There is talk, there's ongoing advocacy to reduce some of that shelter restriction. We'll see what happens with that. And then a lot of times you'll get a phone call. Let's say you're the family member you're the family member trustee for your child with a disability. And I'm not blaming anybody here, right? Medicaid, Social Security are underfunded programs. You might get a new person on the phone who just started and says, hey, I'm looking at these special needs trust reports, and I see that you're spending things that aren't related to that beneficiary's disability. Well, that doesn't matter. You can spend it on whatever you want, right? Within reason and fiduciary guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the court case right there that says, hey, you can spend this on things other than things that are related directly to the beneficiary's disability. Shelter restriction does absolutely include rent. And I'll take it one step further and say, if that beneficiary is receiving SSI and is of majority, right? So Texas probably over age of 18, maybe 21, I don't know. They should be paying you rent, actually, so that they are not jeopardizing their SSI benefit, because you're providing them with a place to live which is called in-kind support and maintenance.
So I just like to mention here that if your kid is getting SSI and they're getting 629 a month, that tells me that you don't have a rent agreement if they're not working. It tells me you don't have a rent agreement in place. If there's a rent agreement in place, then that SSI will go up to the 943 a month. And then the other thing that so it's basically rent, or it could be a monthly mortgage payment. Monthly debt service for your regular house bills is kind of basically what that is. And I just wanted to further have that caveat that a special needs trust absolutely can, depending on how it's drafted, pay for food and shelter. But if the individual is getting SSI, there would be that 1/3 reduction to SSI. So it's not that it can't, it can, but
Right.
it would come with a reduction to the SSI. And we talk about that in other webinars, but I just wanted to mention that.
Cool. Okay, so now we know all the rules. How can we make this sounds daunting? It is. How can we get our beneficiaries some financial independence where they can go out and make purchases on their own for items that are allowable? And to Allison's point, of course, everything is everything is a maybe, right? Because you can always take that 1/3 reduction and just not receive as much SSI. But if we're trying to preserve the entire, $943 in SSI, but we want to give our beneficiaries independence, how can we do that? Well, there's this thing called the TrueLink card, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about today, where we can take money from the special needs trust, from the ABLE account, from the third party trust, from wherever, excuse me, and we can put this money on the card, and then the beneficiary can go make those purchases themselves, right? Really, really neat. Let me tell you a story about how it used to work. So as a trust officer for 20 years, and this doesn't go back that long, so about 10 years ago, there used to be, I would run into the situation all the time. Beneficiary wants to go buy a TV. Amazing. Let's get a budget approved, right? Let's say it's $2,000. And then I, as the trust officer, I would say, beneficiary, please go down to Best Buy, for example, and pick out a TV. So that beneficiary would go down to Best Buy, they would pick out their TV, and then they would have to ask the associate there, can you please put this in the electronic cart for me? Well, why? Well, because I need to know how much it's going to be with taxes, with the delivery fee, with any sort of options. And so that associate would put it in there. And then that beneficiary, and then they would say, great, can we, complete this sale today? And that beneficiary would have to explain to them, well, no, I have a disability and I'm not allowed to spend my own money. So what I need you to do is I need you to call my trustee, and he'll either put it on the corporate card for me, because Best Buy won't take a check from somebody who's not the actual purchaser, and they'll make arrangements. And it's how demeaning, right? It was bologna sandwich. That's my term for BS. To put that beneficiary through that when it's unnecessary. And so now what we can do is put that money on the TrueLink card. That beneficiary can go out and buy that TV, pay for it themselves, learn about financial literacy, learn about financial independence. And you may be saying, well, this sounds too good to be true. How do we know that it's quote unquote legal? Well, we're actually the only company to be specifically mentioned by name in the POMS, and that's the Program Operation Manual System, which are the guidelines for Social Security and SSI, that as long as the card is in the name of the trust or in the name of the trust administrator or that beneficiary's power of attorney or things like, in other words, if it's not a resource to the beneficiary, somebody else has control over the funding and the reporting thereof, but it still has that beneficiary's name on it, you're totally fine, which is incredible. And so that's how the TrueLink card works. Now it gets even more granular, which we'll go through here in a second, as to all of the restrictions or allowances that you can sort of go through. Here's the actual POMS. You can see there TrueLink, mentioned right there in the Social Security. And then obviously then it offers a little bit more protection for your beneficiaries too, because it's a prepaid debit card. So it's not linked directly to their ABLE account. It's not linked directly to the special needs trust. I mean, it is, but somebody has to fund the card, right? So as you can see here, right, 1 in 20 older adults or people with disabilities are subject to elder abuse and elder fraud. That number is probably low, quite frankly, because people don't report it all the time or they're embarrassed, right? And things like that. So this is another way where you could protect your child with a disability, your grandparent who is aging, from fraud and things like that. So it really has a multitude of uses. And with that, I will stop sharing and jump in to show you exactly what I mean by, hey, what's a TrueLink card? Okay, so this is the dashboard of the TrueLink card. Let's call them the administrator, right? Beneficiaries we have an app for the beneficiaries where they can see, hey, what's been restricted? What's my card balance? We also have fantastic customer support, for phone calls and when beneficiaries have questions and things like that. But here we go, right from the very beginning. This particular beneficiary, you can see right here, card balance of $140. And you can see here, we've turned off access to cash. Okay, why would that be important? Cash is one of the big no-nos, right, for SSI if this money's coming from a trust or things like that. From an ABLE account, totally fine. From a special needs trust, giving cash to the beneficiary reduces their SSI benefit, right? That's where it starts counting as income. So as you can see here, we've blocked access to cash for this particular beneficiary from withdrawals at ATMs, inside a bank, or even back at cashback at purchase. If we had allowed this, so again, you can think of a multitude of uses. I'll tell you right now, I was a TrueLink client before I was a TrueLink customer. My first TrueLink cards were for actually some ultra high net worth families who wanted these for their kitchen staff. Because what they were finding is they were using regular credit cards and taking cash back at time of purchase, and they wanted to, not allow that. My daughter has a TrueLink card. My daughter does not have a disability, but she's 15. I should mention that. But so that I can, put some guidelines around where she can and can't spend, some of the money, that I put on there. So you can also see here, the cards come with top line protections, and all of these are, as you can see, really easy to change. We maintain our own scam watch list, and I should say all of the where we block or allow transactions, this is all based, it's a Visa card. It's all based on Visa merchant coding. So, we do get, a lot of updates from Visa on their scam watch, and things of that nature. And so we maintain, a list of vendors that you probably should be blocked. Excuse me. So you can see here, we see a lot of fraud with online and phone purchases. And one of the neat things about TrueLink is that this product is constantly improving. When I started 7 years ago, there were not any of these exceptions. So we have a bunch of programmers on staff, in addition to our financial planning side. And you can see here, we do have, exceptions where you can allow utility bill payments, et cetera, et cetera. We see a lot of fraud in international transactions, so that's blocked here. Now, it gets even more granular. So what you can use the card for, and what you can't. Here's an example. And let's use food because that's the easiest way to do it, even though it doesn't matter anymore, okay? Imagine a beneficiary wants to go shopping, but they want to go to Walmart, right? They want to go to Target. Well, those big box stores sell food. But sometimes in a smaller town, that's the only option. So a lot of times we want to turn off the ability for some food purchases, but we want to allow that, that Walmart down the street or that bodega, in New York, and just have that agreement with the beneficiary. Hey, just don't spend this on food, or now just don't spend this on shelter items, right? The best way to protect, for this, because SSI or Medicaid almost inevitably and eventually are going to ask, hey, what was this purchase for at Ace Hardware, for example, okay? You're not going to know. Excuse me, I apologize. So have the beneficiary save those receipts, right? Have those beneficiaries, as soon as they get their receipt, take a picture and send it to you as a trustee or whomever is going to be reporting to SSI or Medicaid. That way you have proof, hey, this shouldn't result in an ISM, in-kind support and maintenance, or income reduction for the beneficiary's SSI. Now, It can get a little tricky because this is all based on Visa merchant coding. Okay, so you can see here we've allowed goodwill, for example. Okay, one of the big things for a special needs trust is that it has to be for the sole benefit of the beneficiary if it's a first party trust. Goodwill is coded by Visa as a charitable organization. Donating to charities isn't for the sole benefit of the beneficiary, right? Stands to reason. But Goodwill is also where a lot of our beneficiaries buy clothing, household goods, things of that nature. So here's where you can go in and actually add a merchant, even though it's coded as a charity, but we know, hey, they're going to be purchasing clothing there, and that's totally an allowable expense from a special needs trust. Right? Another thing that we see a lot is, okay, I want this beneficiary to be able to pay for their cell phone bill, but I don't want them to, and this happens more than you'd think. I don't want them to add their new best friend, right, who lives in the apartment building next to them or the apartment next to them, I don't want them to be taken advantage of and add that person to their Verizon plan. So as you can see here, for this particular beneficiary, we've allowed Verizon, but only limited it to $150 a month or whatever their normal billing cycle is, so that it will be declined if it goes over for that month. Okay. And then you see here we get even more deep in terms of how granular and we can get with spending categories. So TrueLink cards are used a lot for people in the addiction space. So you can see here we can turn off bars and liquor stores, right? We can turn off gambling in casinos. There's even a feature to turn it off after 10 p.m. at night, right? Things like that. And a lot of granularity within here as well. We can block purchases over a certain dollar amount. And then you can see here, we can temporarily override all restrictions. So we can either block everything. Why would we do that? Well, maybe the beneficiary thinks their card is at home, but we just want to be safe. So we block it. When would we allow it? When the beneficiary's on vacation, because all of a sudden then they can spend money on food and shelter.
I just have a question because I'm remembering back when my kids were minors and we had a minor Amazon account, and it would send me a message to approve a transaction. Is there a feature like that? So if you have something blocked and they want to ask for permission for a specific expenditure, that you could approve it from your phone. Does anything work like that?
It does. So you can
Yay.
see here, so some of the alerts, right? You can be alerted for transactions over a certain amount when the balance, this is important, right? Because we don't want somebody to have an emergency and be out of funds. When the card balance drops below a certain amount, cash withdrawals, funding, block transactions, things like that. Now, here's where you can get really, really detailed, and you can get a text message on those certain alerts. And so this is where that approval thing would happen. So you would get alerted that it was declined. And then, you could talk to the beneficiary. Hopefully they're still there at the store. Then you can go back and allow that. And then it happens almost instantaneously, or you can do it by email, and then you can send it in real time as they occur, or in a once daily digest. Now, I usually recommend don't get it real time, and yet I do that for my daughter just to make sure she's safe, right? Oh, you told me you were going to Dairy Queen, but you really walked down the street to McDonald's, which of course I never call her out on, but it's just, an extra safety, protection. But if you have a difficult beneficiary, right? I've been bit on this, where all of a sudden I'm in a meeting and I get 30 declined transaction reports because they're trying to go to the casino, right? And it's all by text message on my phone. So, and that's customizable. If you have multiple clients with multiple cards, you can, set the preferences per card. Okay. Very robust reporting here. As you can see, we can download transaction reports, download them as a spreadsheet. If you're working with a conservatorship, or in your state, I think it's guardianship of the estate, and you have to do that court reporting. You can download all transactions and cut and paste them into your guardian report. You can see block transactions and then monthly statements as well. And your beneficiaries also have access to this with their own login, so that they can download their monthly statements and see their balance and things like that. Quick view of all the transactions, and then account settings, just on the account, where you can temporarily deactivate or order the replacement. Now, the current cost for this card is only $12 a month. Really, I think, at least, really a small price to pay for empowering a beneficiary to make their own decisions, to be safe with their money, and learn financial literacy. We've had so many stories about beneficiaries who, they get their first TrueLink card, you slap $400 on there, and they spend it all at the bookstore, at Barnes and Noble, right, or something. But that was their money for the whole month. Okay, all right, good teaching moment, right? Learning moment. And okay, so we can't do that. And then you just sort of promote, and you can fund this as often as you want. You can fund it daily, you can fund it weekly, you can fund it monthly, and sort of teach beneficiaries more about financial literacy.
So, can we just, I mean, this is not a topic about guardianship, but can we talk about kids that maybe aren't under guardianship? Maybe there's a power of attorney in place.
Mhm.
Maybe there's nothing in place. Let's talk about the kids that have nothing in place. Let's talk about the kids that are not under guardianship. Does this still work?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
100%. I mean, that's what I do for Mackenzie. That's my daughter. So as long as, I'm her natural guardian, so, there's no orders in place, but yeah, I put this all in there, and she's actually really, she's been really good. I'm lucky. She's been really good about budgeting and learning about finances. I do not expect the same from my son, who's 11, but he'll get one eventually.
So, for example, so when we've got a kid that's not under guardianship, and let's just say for a moment that we've got a mom, the mom is the trustee of the special needs trust. The special needs trust can make a distribution from the special needs trust to the TrueLink card. A representative payee for the SSI comes in. You want to make a distribution from that account to the TrueLink card. You absolutely can. These are ways that we would go about doing it when there might be like a rep payee or a trustee in place of the special needs trust. Is that right?
100%. Any sort of legal authority or designation over, whoever the card holder is works fine.
Okay, let me see.
We see this a lot, like with, grandparents or aging parents, where someone's acting as, even limited financial power of attorney, right? But they're funding this card for mom or dad, and, keeping track of that. And there's, 9 times out of 10, there's no public benefits involved, but it's just a fantastic tool to, enable beneficiary empowerment.
So one question is can this SSI payments or Social Security payments be directly deposited to a TrueLink card?
No. I take that back. Yes, you could. Every TrueLink card has its own sort of banking account number. And I guess you could do that. I'm not sure what what the Social Security Administration would say, and here's why. It's because it's held at it's held at SunTrust Bank. Wait, I guess it would. I guess it would work. Sometimes I've seen in some states, though, if you're acting as rep payee, they want like what's called a running balance, like on your typical checking account, right? Where it says $100, you spent $5 here, now it's $95 and things like that. Our statements aren't built like that. So if that's a problem, that might, be a problem, but otherwise,
I'm a
yeah.
fan of cleaner because sometimes working with the government entities is tough. They're oftentimes understaffed. So I'm a fan of
Mhm.
cleaner. So I would just have the standalone account where the SSI goes to is what I would personally do as a parent. But to that point, um, SSI payments can't be directly deposited into an ABLE account or a special needs trust either. So I just
Correct.
wanted to add that because that is true and that comes up. Um, so yes, the TrueLink card could be connected to the SSI if you're the designated payee, meaning you could simply do a distribution from where that SSI comes to make the deposit into the TrueLink card. Is that right, Peter?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if there's one other.
Since we're talking a little bit about outside of trust, what I want to remind everyone is that if, for example, let's say conservatorship, non-conservatorship, whatever, that $2,000, maximum resource limit. We're not talking about trust here for a second, okay? But the $2,000 resource limit, if you're sitting there at $2,100 on the 30th of the month, and you're like, cool, I'll just put $100 on the TrueLink card. It does not work that way. It is still a resource for that beneficiary. Okay. So TrueLink cards do not shield anyone from the resource limit unless the funding is from the special needs trust. So it does not count as a resource because it's still part of the trust, if you will. Okay. It's not directly in the beneficiary's hands, but if the money comes from the beneficiary, from their Social Security, and you're trying to move, monies out to get under that resource limit, that TrueLink card will not protect against that. Neither
That's
will it
where
protect. Go ahead.
that's where they got to move it to the ABLE account or
Able.
to the special needs trust. I mean, as far as getting the resource limit down. But I actually had another question about gifts, because one problem with SSI, as we know, let's say grandma and grandpa give somebody $500 because they graduated, or it's their
Mhm.
birthday, or it's Christmas. That's considered income to the SSI beneficiary. They count that in the month. And so what my question is, and so I know that grandma and grandpa could put that money into their ABLE account and it, basically wouldn't count against them. Could grandma and grandpa put this money, I'm not suggesting it's over $2,000. Let's just use the $100 a month, $100
Income.
figure. Um, if they put that money into the TrueLink card for the kids spending benefit, would that be counted as income to them?
That's still income if the card isn't a special needs trust card.
Okay, so, but if grandma and grandpa put that money into the ABLE account and then the ABLE account made a distribution to the TrueLink card, then that would be fine. And that
Totally
would
fine.
not be income. And so guys, this sounds crazy. It's like, why do we have to jump through all these hoops? But so basically, this is where the ABLE account and the special needs trust, the TrueLink card all work beautifully together to keep you in line with what the rules are.
Yeah, and somebody asked that question. Oh, Cynthia asked a question. Can we have a TrueLink card for all three accounts? The ABLE, the first party special needs trust, the third party special needs trust. And I answered in the chat, the answer is yes. But it's a great point. Yes, have a different card for each one of those different vehicles because the rules are different for each. SSI rules are different for each one of those.
So we've got a lady here that says, my sister worked for a few years and has a 401k. Can that go into a trust and be used for the trust card? We've had this come up, Peter, and so I wanted to discuss that with you. The problem is so yes, the 401k could go into a first party special needs trust, but it would be a taxable event. So some people don't want to go down that highway, and it depends, because we work all across the United States. It depends on what state you're in, on whether or not that 401k is going to count or not. And some of the wording in my experience has been gray on if they're going to count that.
So yeah, they're going to count that. Just go with worst
Most
case
states.
scenario. Yeah, all states. Because here's the thing: legally, you cannot assign ERISA accounts. It's not a thing. You can't assign ERISA accounts. You can be the beneficiary of an ERISA account, and you can designate a beneficiary of an ERISA account, 401ks, IRAs, things like that. But you can't basically turn a 401k into a special needs trust. You have to cash it out. Just as Allison said, which counts at 100% as income in the year that it's received. So then it's taxable as income. Now, there are private letter rulings, PLRs, from the IRS where under certain circumstances, it's important to remember that PLRs are not law. They are simply IRS guidance that are specific to the situation that was presented for that ruling. They're very expensive to obtain and they take a lot of time. There are PLRs where some of this has been allowed under certain circumstances, but in generally that person's 401k or IRA either has to be spent down or as Allison said, cashed out, taxable as income. You can also try to go to court and have it assigned, and I have seen that actually successfully be done. Here's the thing: to me, it's a matter of time before the IRS either sees that or maybe they never notice it. Who knows? But there's only one court that has jurisdiction over the IRS. And so unless you're taking it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, I wouldn't necessarily count that as a great ruling.
And the key, one key thing I just wanted to mention, Peter, is that, a 401k is the individual with the disabilities money. It
Right.
was not given to them by somebody else. It's their money. So if the example of cashing it out and then putting it into a special needs trust, people think, oh, I know, I'll put it in a third party special needs trust because there's no Medicaid payback. You can't do that. That's wrong. It has to go to a first party special needs trust because it's the individual's money, and there is a Medicaid payback on that first party special needs trust. So I think what we're saying, in a nutshell, I know you have more slides, is that it is complicated, and this is why you want to work with a professional, because it's easy to make a misstep or to misunderstand, or someone say, oh yeah, I'll put it in a third party, like they did. It's quick misinformation, really quick, that has to be unraveled. So I just wanted to mention that.
No, you're absolutely right. And that distinction between first and third is so difficult, even when you're talking about crowdfunding, right? What is it called? Like GoFundMe. Unfortunately, here in Colorado, I'm in Denver. We have a lot of experience with that, with the Columbine shootings, the Aurora Theater, and unfortunately, it's all over the country, right now. But if those GoFundMe accounts aren't set up correctly, they're actually first party money. When even though all of the money is coming from third parties, so all of this, again, to echo what Allison said, all of this really requires a really knowledgeable and steady hand to guide you through some of these processes. Now, I just want to mention on the 401k thing, don't get scared, moms, dads, grandparents with children with disabilities. There's a new way to leave the money in your 401k or your IRA to a special needs trust that's actually beneficial to a person with a disability. And it's all governed under the Secure Act 2.0. I do a lot of presentations on this. I'm sure Allison and her group has done a bunch of presentations on this, but it's basically flipped planning on its head. It used to be general advice, and I'm oversimplifying, is, hey, leave your assets in the qualified plan to a person without a disability, and everything else to the person with a disability for tax planning purposes and for being able to stretch the our required minimum distributions over their lifetime. Now that's completely flip-flopped, and that's fairly new. Came out at the end of 2020 and then was revised here again recently. So definitely something to talk to your planner about. Okay, let's go back to whatever the heck we were talking about before, which is here. This is just a case study that I use in a lot of my. This is actually a case that Steve Dale and I had together. We have, the parents want to enact a plan for their daughter who has Down syndrome. They want daughter, as we all do as parents, right, to be as empowered as possible and make all the decisions, in her life. She's 19 years old. Instead of enacting what is the most restrictive, taking away the most of her rights, which would be conservatorship or guardianship, they want to help her do something called supported decision making, which is she has trusted advisors, which could be the parents themselves, could be friends, could be financial advisor, to sort of oversee. And this is actually Steve Dale's, who's a really well-known and well-respected special needs trust attorney. He teaches with me almost every year at the UT Law Conference as well. This is actually the story about his niece. So she's really easily influenced by others. She chooses 3 close friends. She goes out, she gets a TrueLink card. She makes all those purchases that probably weren't in the best interest. This goes back, gosh, 8 years. And the supported decision makers, which is a big thing, right? They're not fiduciaries. They're people who do not help a person make a decision. In other words, they don't input their own values. They don't try to sway the person with a disability's decision. Rather, they help interpret all of the information. As we all know, right, people with disabilities learn, differently. Heck, everyone learns differently. That was silly of me to say. Everyone learns differently, processes information, visual learners, right? Context learners, right? Emotional learners, things like that. And supported decision makers help put all of the financial decisions in this particular or all the financial impacts in this particular decision in front of the beneficiary. Hey, sure, we could spend $400 at Barnes and Noble, but don't forget, right? We also wanted to go, down to the music store and, things like that. Oh yeah, and what happened actually in this particular case was, through the use of supported decision making, which you guys are in the state that is like leading the country on supported decision making and the statutes therein. And it's actually, written into your state statute, the supported decision making agreement and all of that. This is where they can come in and really assist and give. And I used to call this the ability to fail. I hate that now. Someone told me, hey, it's dignity of risk. It's giving that niece, hey, here's the dignity of because with any child, we tend to overprotect, we tend to over explain, we tend to make decisions that are in their best interest and don't give them the ability to fail or have that dignity of risk. And this is where supported decision making for a person with a disability and a TrueLink card, so that instead of spending $4,000 at Barnes and Noble, she only spent $400, and then we can help educate on financial literacy. I wish this was around when I was growing up, right? Financial literacy, especially in college, right? Where they just all of a sudden they just give you a credit card when you get into college. And learn about interest and income and savings and things like that. Just a fantastic way to, and I think this is a fantastic way to just close the program, and say, hey, there's this tool out there for you to protect your beneficiaries' public benefits, give them financial empowerment, teach them financial literacy, and really offer those wraparound services that all of us want. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Peter. You can go to the next slide. Someone put in the chat box, can we have a class on supported decision-making agreement? And I wanted to let you guys know that on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, there are hundreds of webinars surrounding some of these topics that we've been talking about. We have plenty of talks about guardianship, but more importantly, the alternatives to guardianship and what he was speaking of, the supported decision-making agreement, which also usually comes along with a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney, HIPAA release, or it's recommended that you have those documents in place. So we have entire webinars on that. And anytime that a person's talking about guardianship, they should be also speaking about the lesser restrictive options as well. And so that is an important part. So these are some things to keep on your radar. We've got webinars on all of these topics. I think our next slide might be the upcoming webinar topics. You'll be able to click on this link and it will have all of the upcoming webinars that you can register for. And you can kind of see the titles for kind of the step that you are on for your planning journey. We work on a collaborative team here at CPG. Again, we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. The slides here today are going to have Peter's contact information. So if you're interested in getting signed up for that TrueLink card, I saw in the chat box, how much is it again? It's $12 a month. So it's very, very affordable and doable. And you can go to our last slide, Peter. So we're happy to chat with you if you have additional questions. And one more slide, please. This will have a link to how you can reach us and get on our calendar. We always offer free personalized consultations to talk to you about kind of where you are in the planning process. And I always like to encourage you to say, it's not about beating yourself up about what you haven't done or what you got started and you put on the shelf and it's a little dusty. It's about picking up where you are right now and taking those next steps forward to get where you want to be when it comes to planning for your loved one. And quite frankly, planning for your own future. As families, we're going to be spending 25 to 35 years in retirement. When we have a child that has a disability, they may have planning needs 25 to 35 years after we're gone. And some of us have more than one child with a disability. So it's like a second and a third and fourth retirement bucket. And so careful planning goes into play, but we can definitely help you. We can make sure that you have the money in the right buckets. We can go deeper and wider with you on the ABLE accounts. We have entire presentations on ABLE accounts and what you need to know about those. We have entire presentations on special needs trust, both first party and third party. So if you were hearing some stuff today and it sounded a little bit foreign to you, go check those out on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. And you'll get that information. That channel was born out of my own frustration when my kids were transitioning into adulthood. I was super annoyed on how difficult and how hard everything is, and I know this stuff. And so we want to empower you, give you the tools and resources that you need to be successful on your planning journey. Well, Peter, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad we did this, and we are certainly going to partner with you again to talk more about the TrueLink card. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. Watch your emails. You're going to get an email with our slides and a link to the recording, and we'll look forward to being back with you again soon. Take care. Bye now.